Good Saturday morning to you, everybody, and welcome to Mortgage Matters Radio Show and the Connecticut Real Estate Edge podcast, along with Rob Weinberg. I'm Gary Byron. Hey, Rob, good morning.
Hey, Gary, how's it going today?
Good, my friend. How have you been?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just gearing up here for the spring, let's hope.
Well, yeah, all right, so let's talk about that just for a brief moment. The difference between the winter months and early spring. I call early spring March, maybe March. Well, say March, late March, April is what I look at as early spring. Is there a significant difference between the market, or maybe I should say inventory when it comes to homes?
Yeah. I mean, look, everyone knows that the majority of people buying homes have families, I should say, have kids in school. So that drives a lot of those decisions. That drives a lot of the timing. So generally, like spring, people are going to gear up to buy a home in the summer so that they can move and get all the logistics done and pretty much moved in by the time the kids start school. So you can kind of see, if you look back like decades, there's like an ebb and flow where we see inventory go down in the winter, and then we see it tick up a bit as we get into spring and summer, and that's also coinciding with, the actual activity in the market and when people are buying and selling homes.
Interesting. All right. So a stagnant market, a slow market right now, it's inevitable, I suppose. It'll start picking up in about a month.
It's normal seasonality, and those listeners that have heard us for years know, like, we do a seasonality show on Mortgage Matters here and the Connecticut Real Estate Edge podcast. We've done a couple shows on seasonality where we go in depth on that, and this year's not any different than last year, the year before, or even 10 years ago. We're just continuing to see the seasonality. So right now, I think some of the things are being embellished, like the low inventory and whatnot. But, there are brighter times ahead. Even if we just see a little bit of an uptake at this point, any uptick in inventory would be great, and any downtick in rates would be great and really ignite the market. So that's what we're hoping to see here going into the spring for sure.
What about new build? We've been talking predominantly about houses, pre-existing homes that are going on the market. But what about new build?
Yeah, new build. I mean, look, in a lot of other parts of the country, new builds are, very prominent. In Connecticut, we have an older housing stock, so we do have some new builds here. It's just not like other areas. You go down to, certain parts of Florida, you'll see new builds literally every block after block are new builds with hundreds of homes that they're putting up that have all these nice amenities and all that. And we do have some of that in Connecticut. It's just a much, much lower density than in other areas. So new builds, they're great. They're needed. We have a huge supply shortage. But what we really need is affordable housing. And unfortunately, a lot of the new builds right now are in the $500,000 to $1 million price point or more. That's not typically going to be your first-time buyer, your entry-level buyer. What we need are new builds that are priced in the $250 to $400 range.
Who makes that decision of choosing to build?
The builders. They have to make money. They're running a business. So understandably, they don't make as much on a $275,000 house as they would on a $650,000 house. So they've just made decisions to not do it as much. Different show, different topic, but I've heard really cool things about artificial intelligence when it comes to building affordable housing, as well as 3D printing affordable housing. So actually building homes affordably using technology instead of the old-fashioned builders with, actual people hitting hammers on a construction site. Very, very cool stuff going on, but I think that's the future of building and affordable housing.
I'm surprised that, like every other industry, they just don't look at data and say, well, there's an affordable housing need. Let's fill that void.
Well, they got to factor in the price of the land, which is very, very expensive and going up. They've got to factor in the price of taxes and insurance and all these other things, materials, especially over the last couple of years with the inflation, slowly but surely, and more recently, very, very quickly skyrocketing, you just can't take the risk on a very, very low-priced home. I mean, I've talked to some builders myself about it, and it's like there's not profitability. There's too much risk building the affordable housing. So that's okay, though. There's a void in the market, and it's going to get filled, but I think it may get filled through technology, and I'm actually pretty excited about that.
Is there a shortage of land available?
A shortage of land? Well, you can buy land. I mean, you can go on any website and buy land. So I think that there's land available, but is it in the areas that are attractive where you'd want to build a home? Is it affordable? Does it have the things that you need? For example, like how far away is it to run your utilities and your, different things that you need to kind of get the house or build a house there and live there, right? So I think that that's a big factor.
All right. I'm just out of curiosity. I just think that I heard building materials. I actually only heard this within the last week. I heard that they've gone down a little bit.
They have. That's great. I've seen lumber and all that. So, we want to continue to see this trend go down for a lot of reasons. But, I mean, inflation is obviously run rampant. We want to see that go down. That's going to drive mortgage rates down ultimately. So that's huge. That's going to make housing more affordable, okay? That's the bottom line, and make housing cheaper for people that want to buy their first homes and whatnot. So let's hope that trend continues. And I've just had so many of the same questions, Gary, recently on, not necessarily new builds, but just overall the home buying process from the standpoint of the down payment, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the number one hurdle, let me take you back for a second. I did a home buying seminar online on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and we had over 350 people register for it. About 200 showed up, and I had one-on-one consultations with a big group of people over the last couple of weeks. One-on-ones where they actually talked to me about their concerns of buying a home. And I would say the number one thing, even more than credit, was the down payment. And the number one struggle that I see people having when it comes to buying the home right now is their down payment. And I think it's because of inflation and because we're getting spread so thin with our budgets that we can't save extra money.
I believe it.
That's what it's all about. So that's what I wanted to dive into today was the down payment dilemma that everyone's having, this dilemma of, do I save money? Do I pay off debt? Do I buy a home? Do I keep renting? Where do I put that dollar? Because once you spend it once, you can't spend it again, right?
All right.
And there's so many people talking. Last week we talked about PMI, and there's too many people trying to avoid it for the wrong reasons.
So there's got to be some common mistakes that people are making in order to save for their down payment. Let's start there.
Yeah, so the number one mistake I would say right off the grip is going to be assuming that you know how much money you need. So there's two schools of thought. There's people that are like, I need 20%, no ifs, ands, or buts. And then there's other people that are like, I don't need any money to buy a house. I have $1,000 in my bank account. I'll buy a house with that. Unfortunately, they've heard from the media, the social platforms, and other people that it's a free handout. Everyone deserves to own a home, and if you don't have the money, the government will give you the money to buy a home.
I don't know about that.
Well, you're right. I'm here to squash that today. That's a myth. That's not true. I have seen one-off scenarios where the deal can be put together with down payment assistance and seller concessions and all these unique unicorn items, and someone can buy a home with $500, okay? I have seen that happen before. I have had clients do that before. But you're talking about less than 5% of the time. So it's not something that we want to base things on. If it happens to work out that way, great. But assuming you know how much you need is a big mistake. Saving too much or too little, which goes along with that. Taking advice from people that don't know the current loan offerings. Someone that bought a home 15 years ago and put 20% down, well, that doesn't translate to today. Different market, different products, different offerings. Many people just wait too long to get started, Gary. They just have analysis paralysis, and they're trying to figure it all out on their own, and they can't, so they just don't do anything. And then a year or two go by, and they go, darn, I should have bought a house. And they could have if they had the direction, if they had the strategy, right? But they don't. So waiting too long to get started is a huge, huge mistake. The last thing would be commingling funds. So, you might have money that you're starting to save up to buy a home, but you're keeping it in your checking account at the same place that you pay all your bills out of, and then next thing you know, something comes up, and that $1,500 or $2,000 that you started saving towards your home purchase
gone.
It's eaten up by something. Yeah, and it's gone. So you don't want to commingle the money. You want to create a special savings account or some account somewhere that you can't just easily access, but you want to be able to see it, watch it grow. You want to be able to transfer money into it easily. Just don't mingle it with your day-to-day expenses.
And let's not forget to put about $10,000 aside for the closing costs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have seen quite a few times where, especially lately, I've seen the seller paying some of the closing costs. But ideally, yeah, you want to have flexibility with this stuff. I'm not going to sit here and say, Gary, that people should skimp when it comes to down payment or closing cost savings. The more money you have available, the more flexibility you're going to have. The easier it is to get your mortgage approved. That's the bottom line. Just because you have $30,000 saved doesn't mean you're using $30,000 to buy the house. Maybe you're only going to use 15 out of that, but the more you have, the better, for sure.
All right, then I'm going to get right to it. What